Well, another issue of Sport Pharmacy magazine has dropped. As always, great contributions from many authors targeting so many different areas of the gut health. And the gut health is so diverse. Like, I literally feel like the gut health could be an entire year of issues if we wanted it to.
Oh, for sure.
But so many great contributions. So I want to again thank all the authors who contributed there too. And what Jess and I wanted to kind of look at today is some issue topics. Again, we said there's 1,000 topics, and we couldn't get all the topics that we wanted to into the magazine. So Jess and I want to focus on a few topics that didn't quite make the cut, but are very important as relates to gut health, for performance, for wellness, for all the above. And I know one that we've talked about before a lot, Jess, is birth control.
hmm I was gonna say we see a lot of our women on birth control. And I think the biggest thing, misconception, or a lot of people think about is they use birth control just for birth control. And a lot of athletes are using it I see it for like acne. I see it for to get their periods back regular because they may be under eating or overtraining, to help with controlling when they may be menstruating around competitions, to help control with like PCOS or endometriosis. So I think birth control pills is a broad topic, but I think it's something that the amount of uses is even bigger besides just for birth control pills.
And
You see it for other stuff?
those are the main things that I see it for. And I would say, especially for male coaches, I think, a female coach, just with experience could be familiar with some of those other
Yeah.
non-contraceptive uses. But I'll be honest with you, I feel pretty confident saying that most guys are not familiar with as broad of a range as it is. And I can just say from my own experience, working, as a dietitian for the years, obviously I knew some of the side ones, but once I started working more in the pharmacy world, it just really like, wow, I didn't realize all the different conditions that fall under birth control. And as we're going into all the complications that can lead to, with respect to how it interacts with the guts and with different nutrients
Yeah.
there. So can you give like a quick overview of how the different types of birth control pills, how they're kind of working within the body?
So I think you can kind of divide birth control pills into two classes. There's the combination ones, which is an estrogen and a progestin, and then there's just plain progestin ones. The most common one you are going to see is going to be this combination pill. And then you do see progestin only. I don't see that used as frequently. It's a little bit more, you have to be a little more precise on when you take it, and you have less room for error. So that's the one I see used less. But most people, it is basically just estrogen and progesterone. Then you also have some new intrauterine devices that use copper or hormones also that can be inserted. There is also rings. Instead of taking an oral birth control pill, there is actual rings that you can insert vaginally that have birth control in them that people will use also for the same reasons, to get these hormones into your body. And so the biggest difference I see in birth control is basically the dose of the synthetic estrogen that is in the birth control pills. So when you're looking at them, we're talking microgram differences, but that is going to be your biggest difference, is the amount of the estrogen or synthetic estrogen in the birth control pills. So what they do is basically they suppress your body from causing ovulation. So if you were to, normally you have like a spike of estrogen followed by a big wave of progesterone. When you take birth control pills, you basically just kind of stay at a constant level of estrogen and progesterone throughout the month. And then when you stop the pill on that week that you take like non-active pills, you actually have what is really called a withdrawal bleed. And it's not an actual true cycle, because of how the birth control pills work. Is actually just a withdrawal bleed from being off the hormones. So you kind of suppress your natural hormones when you use birth control pills, if that makes
No,
a whole lot of sense.
no,
Just my little graph here to be like, this is what a hormone cycle looks like. And this is what a birth control cycle looks like.
You visually painted it with words.
Yeah, I tried. I tried.
No, well done. Now
Yeah.
tying that into the gut health now.
Yeah.
So the esprolome, very fascinating topic
Super.
with how it affects everything. So dive in, share away here.
Oh. So estrobolome, I don't know how you say it. Potatoes. I probably butcher it every single time.
Say it
But
with confidence, though.
there is definitely emerging research showing that gut microbiota play a big role in the regulation of estrogen levels in your body. And it's collectively called the estrobolome. And so in a healthy, undisturbed gut, this estrobolome maintains like optimal estrogen levels. So when you disturb your gut in different ways, antibiotics, training, stress, whatever that may be, you can actually get this estrobolome thrown off balance, and therefore you may end up with too much or too little estrogen being produced in your body. Also shown that synthetic estrogens actually also negatively inhibit or affect the balance of this estrobolome. So it's pretty interesting. It's a new area that I've kind of started to dive into, and I know it's not totally mainstream. Did you get a lot of it in your? I know you just went to a course or a gut health course. Did they touch on this at all, or?
With respect to the hormones, estrogen,
Yeah, with hormones.
no, we actually never touched on that
Okay.
much at all.
Um, so have you, I know your article this month was on leaky gut. So
Yeah.
can you kind of, I guess, dive into a little bit more about the gut microbiota and the junctions and kind of how birth control pills affect leaky gut?
Yeah. Because that's where it gets fascinating is how the hormones affect things. So if people aren't familiar with the leaky gut, basically what happens is you have what's called your epithelial layer. It's kind of like the first layer of the gut, and you have these tight junction proteins that, for lack of better words, hold them together. What can happen is that tightness can decrease. So all of a sudden, instead of your cells being, like this together, they start spreading apart. And you get inflammation. Particles that should be staying on the outside of the gut start going on the inside. So they kind of come right through.
Okay.
It can be anything from endotoxins. It can be, inflammatory cytokines, LPS. And then once they get absorbed, they can trigger the immune response, which the immune response triggers inflammation. So you kind of get this systemic inflammation that can be resulting from the leaky gut issue. But kind of in short terms, it's just the breakdown of the wall, allowing particles that should stay on the inside to come through the body.
Makes sense. And I think it's so fascinating, the gut and especially leaky gut and how that you don't think about it because you don't see it. Like you
Yeah.
don't see how your gut's made up and you can't see these little tight junctions starting to space apart and letting stuff get in until you start having symptoms. I know one symptom or one thing that's kind of starting to come out is obviously oral estrogens can increase the permeability as we discussed, causing some leaky gut, but also that leaky gut may also roll into increasing your risk of like depression, especially starting birth control pills. There's a couple studies showing that new onset use of birth control pills can increase a woman's risk of depression, which I thought was really interesting. This also playing back to what we've talked about before on like gut brain axis. I know you have some additional interesting information about the role of the GI tract and on mental health and kind of conditions that you've read about too.
No, I mean, this is where it's, I find it so fascinating. They're actually looking at your gut health, actually predisposing or being the cause of a lot of neurodegenerative diseases down the road.
So
One that we've talked about before is Parkinson's disease, where they're finding basically the proteins that are kind of going up, kind of wrecking havoc in the brain. Those actually originate in the gut. So people who have gut issues, they're finding that's almost all the time are ones who develop into Parkinson's disease.
mm-hmm.
And I don't want to be a fear monger here. I'm not saying if you have a gut health issue, you're going to have Parkinson's disease. So that's not
No.
what I'm saying. But that's what they're finding. It's basically, traveling upward north. Similarly, I was at a conference, microbiome conference over the weekend, and they were talking about how If you look at the brain under depression, anxiety, you have higher levels of inflammation. And these same inflammatory markers are also present for Alzheimer's disease. And so this really puts high precedence on, hey, if you're having anxiety issues, if you're having depression issues, get help. Because if your brain is constantly inflamed, that's going to significantly increase risk of Alzheimer's disease down the road. And, this is purely coincidental, but I was in the pharmacy today and I had a lady come in and we were talking and she's like, my memory is just not what it used to be. I'm like, oh, like, just from getting age. She's like, no, it happened after in about a 16-month span, she had 5 people close to her die. A husband, um, uh, like a cousin. I mean, it was just like boom, boom, boom. And
Oh,
she's like, this is gonna sound really weird, but that was a really stressful time period. And it was roughly about a year after then, she's like, I just started noticing things went really quick. And she's like, I thought it was maybe once I got through the trauma, the grief, it'd come back, but she's like, it's not. And again, I thought it was so interesting coming off that conference. Now, am I saying that was the cause? No, I'm not saying that, of course. But from an anecdotal, end of one type story, that was really interesting. That would kind of exemplified what these researchers were sharing over the weekend of depression, anxiety. That same inflammation is the same inflammation that's present and causes Alzheimer's dementia. So super fascinating on
very
there. So if
interesting.
you're having mental health issues, like I said, recognize it, obviously as, Jess just shared with us in terms of it can happen as a result of being on birth control pills. That's something that's really important to be aware of.
Mhm. I was going to say, I feel like many people, and we've talked about the importance of, managing stress and also just how stress can play a role in the health of your gut too. And all the impacts that constant stress. And I can only imagine what losing 5 people in 16 months, the stress that had to have put her body
Mm-hmm.
under. And it does take time to heal. And a lot of people don't think about looking at their gut or looking
Yeah.
at that because you don't see it. You only have this symptom and that symptom. And most people don't think about going deep into like the root cause and what is your gut allowing through or not through, or how
Mm-hmm.
these neurotransmitters are working in there and connecting back to your brain. So I find it so fascinating.
Yeah. And
um
and and
yeah, it's just
another thing, kind of the telltale symptoms. So depression's usually not something that all of a sudden, boom, I have depression today. It's kind
right.
of a development process,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
maybe another one that can be even earlier. So as you're going down this pendulum, of things with leaky gut, I always tell people, hey, if you start having skin rashes or skin conditions, and if you put a cream on it and it's not gone in 3 to 5 days or keeps on coming back, I'm like, that's not a skin issue, that's a gut issue.
Yeah,
So that's usually when
that's
I'm
a
working with
great.
people to help them identify things. Is again, you can't see what's happening in your gut, but you sure as heck can see what's happening on your skin,
Mhm.
and using that as the early warning signs of something's triggering the
Yeah,
gut.
I love that. That's a great way of giving someone a practical application of looking before it gets too far across the pendulum. I think that another one that people don't talk about, we were laughing at the TV last night, is like anyone doesn't want to talk about poop. Everyone's like, nope, number two. I went number two. And like even the commercial last night was like, women poop too, it's okay. But like the whole changes in your bowel patterns and your stool thing and your stool, and like, are you going once a day? Are you going once a week? And like the whole, I think it's a whole nother discussion we can have on like inflammatory bowel disease in women, especially that have such a high risk of it. Is it correlated to birth control pill? Is it correlated to anxiety? Is it correlated to gut health? Probably yes to all of them in some sort of way, but some people also, I think if you start having changes in stool pattern or consistency, definitely need to look into it versus just taking a laxative or a stool softener or something like that. So I like the skin rash one. That's a little easier to talk about.
although
um,
although as a dietitian, I've gotten so many poop conversations. It doesn't even faze me anymore.
I'd say as a pharmacist, I get the skin rash one all the time. So, but I do think we cannot leave birth control pills without talking about nutrient depletion and just how impactful they can be on vital nutrients. I usually use the example of, if it's a nutrient that you need to be pregnant or have a healthy pregnancy, it's probably a nutrient that birth control depletes, is usually like my example or my descriptive to people. And it's a lot of them. So,
Yeah.
yeah, what are your thoughts on, I know you're big on nutrient depletion, so share with all of us.
Well, I think with nutrient depletions, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. I feel like birth controls wipe out all the B, like a bunch of the B
Everything.
vitamins.
Mm-hmm.
We know B vitamins are key for energy production. They play a huge role in mood, just across the board. They deplete the body in vitamin C, vitamin E. So, from an athlete standpoint, your vitamin C's and E's help with inflammation control. Vitamin C is also critical. It's what helps if you look at collagen, which is basically your connective tissue. Vitamin C is kind of like the nail that holds those, helps hold those protein strands together. So that's going to get, knocked. The other one too is magnesium.
Our
Magnesium,
favorite.
it does over 600 reactions in the body. It's like the composer of composers. I always tell people that magnesium is kind of like the therapist of your body. And I call it the therapist of your body because it reduces stress, it helps your sleep, it relaxes your muscles, it just like chills everything out. So going back to this, thing that we were talking about, because it's always, there's so many different prongs that come off. You
Yeah.
talked about the leaky gut issues, that can be caused, kind of made me more directly with the birth control pills. But then I always think about, what are those indirect feedback loops? So if we're taking something that's depleting both our B vitamins and magnesium, we know those are critical for neurotransmitters in the brain that regulate anxiety, mood, depression, motivation. So if we're now more stressed, we're more depressed, we're more whatever because of these other things are getting depleted, that's going to cause more stress, causes more inflammation, which is going to further antagonize the gut. So
This is the cycle. Like, it's
yeah.
the cycle you and a lot of people don't, I don't think, talk about nutrient depletion enough or realize the true impacts. And I think some people, for me, I think a lot of people will get labs drawn and they're in range, but is that truly optimal for the athlete or the performance or the level that you're competing at? Or is it truly optimal just for regular humans? Sometimes I feel like ranges are ranges, and we may need to be at the higher end of them for a lot of them. And so I feel like sometimes even getting blood work, you still may be lacking, but maybe not technically deficient, but you're still lacking. And so you can always use some supplementation. Do you have like a go-to magnesium?
My favorite magnesium that I'll usually go with is like a magnesium bisglycinate.
Woo, me too.
I like that one. I'll
Me
also
too.
use occasionally like a dimagnesium malate at times. Those are probably my two favorite
Yeah.
ones. I have played around with magnesium threonate, which has some research supporting brain
Brain
health.
health. Yeah.
I can't say that I found much of a difference, and the concentration, you have to take so many pills to get the magnesium content. I just found cost benefit analysis, found the magnesium bisglycinate was usually my preferred form.
Usually mine too. There's a trimag that has bisglycinate, malate, and I think a little bit of citrate form. So
Citrate, yeah, yep,
just if
I've used those before.
yeah, but I'm a big bisglycinate fan too. So
Love it, love
our
it.
recommendations. So I think I mean, I think we've touched on quite a bit of topics around birth control pills and the impacts that they have on your gut and your health and overall. So, I mean, I
What
personally think, for women and being a woman and having gone through this, it is definitely a pretty important decision and a very personal decision if you're going to take it. There are, I think, athletes out there that have won Olympic medals on birth control pills, and there's ones that have won them not on birth control pills. So I think understanding the risk and benefits and the impacts that they can have and trying to mitigate those the best you can if you do choose to use birth control pills is a very personal choice and something you should be aware of as an athlete.
And how, building off your last point, I think this would be a good one to end on is, so if you're taking a birth control pill, what would be your recommendation to women? So like we just talked about the negative effects,
Yeah.
that can have. So let's say you're on for medical reasons or whatever. What would be your recommendations if someone is going to be taking birth control pills?
So definitely I'm a big let's make sure your diet is well, looking at your diet, especially for athletes. A lot of my female athletes, taking a birth control pill will mask if you start losing your period, or if your period starts to get irregular. You'll see that often in like low energy availability or female athlete triad, or what they call REDS now, relative energy deficiency in sport. So that is, birth control can mask that. So making sure that you are getting enough nutrition for your training is going to be critical if you're on birth control pills. Additionally, I really am a big multivitamin with additional magnesium and B vitamins are usually my go-to for athletes taking birth control. And I will usually also add a vitamin C in there. Do you have
Great
any
stuff.
additional that you recommend across the board?
I think you hit kind of the nail on the head for a lot of it. I always go back to, make sure from a dietary standpoint that you're not, I know, especially in females, I think it's common just because there's so much societal pressure of like eating less, eating less, eating less. And usually not getting enough fiber in the diet. Fiber is huge impacts on gut microflora. So, I mean, that'd be the only thing I would add into it, but
Yeah.
second everything that you say there.
Yay. Good job, team.
All right. Good deal. All
Awesome.
right. Well,
Thanks,
thank you for
all.
listening.